Okay. And 3, 2, and 1.
Hey everyone, what is going on? Welcome to another week of And We're Live, and we are live. And I have to apologize. Generally, we start at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursdays. However, I had a shoot today, so I was doing video all morning and part of the afternoon. And it's hard to determine how long a shoot will be. So we ended up having to start a little bit later because of that. So I'm sorry. It's my fault this time. Next time it will be Curtis's fault. By the way, Curtis is here with us. Are you here, Curtis?
I am. What is going on, everyone? Hey, Dr.
Yes.
Tachi. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Curtis
Awesome,
Brooks?
awesome. Doing well, doing well.
CBMP. I need one of those.
Certifications.
Don't start with you.
Right. Everyone should have a
Oh, goodness.
CBMP, right?
Everybody needs a CBMP now.
Right,
We
right,
all
right.
need a CBMP.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, actually, welcome back to our third episode of And We're Live.
And we're live. Yes, yes, yes. We took a
Right.
week off last week because of the holiday. Obviously, it was July 4th last week, so we took a week
Yeah,
off, but we are back and ready.
it's like just starting a job and you're on vacation already.
See,
You
don't
know?
do that to us. Don't do that to us. By the way, we own the job, so we can
Right,
do
right,
that if we
right, right,
like.
right.
We own the job. So
Absolutely.
I just, as we are doing this, getting ready to start, I wanted to put this out on my timeline so that people
Mhm.
can join us for this, and we'll do this. So we're this week we are live on Periscope, Facebook Live, and YouTube. Yes,
Right, absolutely. All three platforms.
all three platforms, all the time. All
Yes,
right.
yes.
So I am going to share this out, and hopefully you all will join us because we are getting ready to school you on some really, really great stuff. But before I start, we haven't talked in a week. Well,
Right.
talked to the audience in a week. We've talked to each other yesterday. But how was your fourth?
It was good. It was good. I went to a friend's house or apartment. I had a good time though. Had a lot of good time. A lot of friends and uh, former co-workers. But yeah, good catching up and had some cervezas and good times.
Yeah, yeah.
And what about yourself?
Good, good. Well, I did the same thing. I did the same thing. Yeah,
You had
thank you for
cervezas too?
asking. What happened?
You had cervezas too? Beer.
Cervezas.
Beer. Did you have beer?
I didn't have beer.
What? No,
I don't.
I know you don't. You said you said you did the same thing. I said, well, so did you also have cervezas?
I didn't have cervezas.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Sir, listen. I did the same thing in terms of going to a friend's house and hanging out.
Okay.
No
But
cervezas.
all right. All righty. All right. No cervezas for
We
you.
had black folks barbecue. Okay.
Oh, well, how
So,
was that? How was that?
oh, it was wonderful,
Good
wonderful,
stuff.
wonderful.
Good stuff.
These people are like my second parents. When I moved to Florida, well, I
Right.
don't,
Right.
I didn't know anybody,
Right.
so they really took me under their wing, and that's like really my second home.
Right.
So,
Right. 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 Yeah.
so
So
yeah, that
it
was
was
good. That was good.
it was a nice break though. You know, it was a nice break.
Okay, good, good. You sound excited as
Yeah.
usual. So
You know me.
that's good. In any case, this is really, really cool information that we have for you all today.
Right.
So I'm hoping that you all will not only join us, but also spread the word because there's a lot of information about live streaming. There are a lot of live streaming shows out there. And going back to what we did last week, we're actually going to talk a little bit about the outline because remember last week I wasn't able to get it to Curtis in
Right.
time. So this week we have a little piece of the outline and we'll show that. I'll briefly go through it and then we'll go on with continuing on with what we're going to talk about today.
Okay. 1 second here.
So yeah, I'm holding.
Okay. All right. Here's the outline that Dr. Chachi promised you.
That Curtis took 10 years to give. Anyway,
Whatever.
so this is what we're going to do. We're going to slowly go through all of this. So you see the wonderful mountain on the left. Ignore the mountain on the left. And hopefully you can see it. I know that it's a little small. So we talked about naming your speech last week, right? Or naming, this says speech, but it says speech because it's public speaking, right? It is public speaking. So name your live stream. You can interject live stream for the word speech. This is just something I use for public speaking, but you can, and see, now I can't see it. Now you made it too big.
I
Thank
go
you.
messing with stuff again.
That's okay. So you're going to name your speech because, or name your live stream, because that actually gives you, remember, a way to go back and remember what it is you talked about during the live stream. So you want to make sure that you name your live stream. It's like naming a child, right? So then remember, we didn't really talk about this at length, but you have a purpose for your speech, right? So your specific purpose, and then your pattern of organization, you don't necessarily have to worry about. We didn't talk about that because it's a live stream. It's a little bit different, right? So you don't have to make it as sharp. And some of these things you can take or leave. It really depends. So you have your intro. We talked about in your introduction. That's where you tell your audience what you're going to talk about. And we use the example of apples, oranges, and pears, right? Today I'm going to talk to you about apples, oranges, and pears. We talked about having an attention grabber or an attention getter. Remember, MC?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So we talked about that in terms of, you don't remember. Anyway,
I do remember.
you don't remember. We talked about that in terms of making sure that you get your audience's attention within the first few moments, because if you don't, you've
Right.
lost them. So you definitely want to make sure you have an attention getter. That could be asking a question. That could be giving a startling statistic. That could be saying, how many of you drove here today? Put a 1 in the chat, right?
Right, right.
Or raise your hand. Put a hand raise emoji in there.
Mhm.
And that's audience engagement. We talked about that last week. The attention grabber engages your audience. So then you can skip the rest of that, okay? And then go straight to your body. 2 or 3 main points. Remember, I said it depends on the amount of time you have for your live
Right.
stream. You can have 2 or 3. Right here are 2. So you have your main point 1, okay? And underneath that, you have 2 sub points. You see A and B, all right? So then you go on, you transition. See where it says connective? You have your transition sentence that smoothly gets you from one block of your body of your speech or presentation to the next. Then the next thing is your main point 2. Again, you have another sentence that introduces your main point 2, subpoints A and B, right? Or 1 and 2, however you want to do that. You then have your connective or your transition, and then you conclude. Your conclusion is your summary. So your summary, again, reinforcing the central idea, summarizing that. Today we talked about apples, pears, and oranges. And then number 2, signal the end of your speech. You have to end it in a nice way. You can't just say, and that's it. A lot of people, how do you end when you end your live streams, Curtis?
When I in my live streams, I like to I like to just engage people by saying, "Hey, thanks for tuning in, guys. Really appreciate you taking time to tune in." And also, I like to let them know what's coming up for the next live stream. Again, that engagement and that audience participation, if you will, or expectation, if you will.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, and guess who I see here? RL Chance. Chance, what's going
Hey,
on?
Mr. Chance,
Thank
what's
you
going on, brother?
for,
How are you?
yeah. Thank you for being here. Come on in. Feel free. All right. So great. That is wonderful. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is your outline. That is what you use to keep yourself
Yeah.
straight. See you later. By the way, guys, I'm still at the shoot place. I'm still at the place where I'm shooting. So if you
She's
hear a
out
little
on,
bit of whatever,
she's out on location.
yeah, I am on location. Thank you. And you know what? I'm going to give a plug because they've been so amazing. They gave me this whole booth to use. I'm at a place called Milk Money Bar and Kitchen, which is in Fort Lauderdale, and they are absolutely amazing. The food and everything, and it feels like home. It feels like family. So
Mm.
I just had to give them a shout out really quickly. So
Hashtag
so
milk money.
anyway, yes, hashtag Milk Money Bar. So
Milk money bar.
hashtag
Okay.
Milk Money Bar. Yeah, they're amazing. So if
Milk
you're ever in
money.
Fort Lauderdale, If you're ever in Fort Lauderdale, spend your milk money at Milk Money. Okay, that's all. I just had to give them a shout out
Right,
because they've
right,
been so
right.
great in accommodating me. Okay,
You know,
so let's
I
now
want
go
to
ahead.
add
Go
to
ahead. Go ahead.
I want to add this to this outline you just mentioned. It's interesting because with the
Okay,
outline, it just really it's like you said, it's a speech, it's storytelling, it's for live streaming. It just works for in all three of those places. So if you're telling a story when you're doing a live stream, it's essentially the same thing.
it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
You are. It's all storytelling, ladies and
absolutely,
gentlemen. All of this is storytelling.
absolutely.
All of it is. So you're trying to tell a story in
Yeah,
some way, shape, or fashion. And the way to tell a story, you don't start with the end usually, right? Well,
right,
some movies do, but generally
right,
you go. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Whatever that means for you. That's all this outline is. It's your beginning, your middle, and your end, and it's
right,
making you cognizant of what that is. Because
absolutely.
problem is, if you don't write it down, most times you won't remember. So we're
Right,
going to
right.
talk a little bit more about that. Yes, MC.
Absolutely. I'm excited about I think
You
what
sound
you're going to
excited.
share. Yeah, I'm very excited.
And you, what you're going to share too. Don't put this
Well,
all
no,
on
no,
me,
no, well,
sir.
no, because I think because when you and I have been working together, and you were working with me on speech and different things, you shared some things with me that I didn't know, and I thought was very interesting. I still find them very interesting. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you about that. So that's going to be the four different parts of speech or speech giving a speech. So, Dr. Tachi.
Fantastic. Oh, and I just signed into Periscope. Hello to Enlighten. Welcome, Enlighten. Are you ready to be enlightened on what we're going to talk about? I hope so. So, welcome to everybody on Periscope, Facebook Live, and YouTube. And let's get to it. So, we're going to talk about, we're still in the presentation stage of this.
Right,
Yes, you don't just jump on. It takes a while before you get to the point where you're ready, most people, to actually get on camera and do things right and well,
right,
right? And you're doing that because remember, our thing is what? ACA, the audience centered approach. You keep your audience at the front of your mind at all times. Part of that is making sure you are well prepared with the information you're going to give them and that it's organized in such a way that they can receive that information. None of this does any good if they can't receive it in a way that works for them, right?
right. Absolutely.
So the first thing I want to talk about is there are four types of speaking. I mean, there are a lot of different types of speaking, but they can all be categorized underneath these four. Oh, and thank you for the hearts. So much enlightened. So let's talk about these four. The first type of speaking is your manuscript speech. So your manuscript speech or your manuscript speaking is when you write out every single thing that you're going to say and then you read it.
Mm, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
I shared with you my disaster the other day when I was called myself. I wrote out everything word for word and tried to do that. It was an absolute disaster. So
Well, what made it a disaster?
because as you mentioned when we were talking the other day, is that it became a crutch for me, and
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't just really get into Curtis. They didn't see my exciting, kind of over the top personality.
I'm sorry. Are we talking about the same Curtis?
Yes, yes. But you know how, well, for me at least,
Oh,
I have this mind where it's like, okay, I'm gonna do this, then I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna spin around, I'll do that.
right.
And, just all this your imagination, but it just didn't work out that way. It was a
What you're talking
disaster.
about too, though, is something that we will talk about next
Yeah.
week. Positive visualization.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry.
Okay, okay. No,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
Right,
No, that's
right.
okay. I think that's really good. It's good. I mean, that's part of
Hey, Dr. Vibe.
preparation,
Right, right.
visualizing yourself doing
Absolutely.
well. Hey, it's Dr. Vibe here.
Yes, yes. Hey, sir, how are you?
Hey, oh, I see Dr. Vibe and Coach Tawana. Hello, hello, welcome. We're talking live streaming and preparing for live streams today. I am Dr. Tachi. I think you all already know me, and I am joined with my co-host Curtis Brooks, CMBP.
Yeah, Mr. Excitement.
Mr. Excitement, exactly, exactly. So that's the first type of speaking, manuscript speaking. Um, What could be the possible problems with this?
Mm,
You The problem is you could sound like this the whole
right.
time because it's mechanical and you are just reading. Think about when you read. There are many people, when they read, they get mechanical. So,
Right.
unless they're really good speakers where they're engaging and you're able to take what's written and perform it, don't do that.
Right.
Don't do it. It's very few people who are able to do that. Read the parts you need to read if they're exact quotes or it's something that is needs to directly be said as is. But other than that, I do not recommend reading word for word. So don't write out everything that you're going to talk about. I don't think it's fruitful at all.
Right.
So that's manuscript speaking. The second type we're going to talk about today is memorized speaking. You know this. Anybody who's ever been in a play or anything,
Yes.
you're memorizing a script, right? So that manuscript, you take it and you commit it to memory. Yeah, no,
Yeah, that doesn't work for me either.
it doesn't work for me either.
Yeah.
You guys know that I act. Unless I'm acting where I'm memorizing lines, I don't memorize things. When I do a speech or speaking opportunities, I am preparing, but I'm not memorizing things. So here are some of the problems that can come from that. If you try to memorize everything, what ends up happening is that you may forget. So
Right.
when you come to the point when you forget, like today I want to talk about apples, oranges. You saw what happened? My eyes went up
Yeah.
because it's like that's something that happens when you forget. Think about it. When you forget things, you either do this or you do this. You physically manifest the forgetfulness, right? So people
Absolutely.
are able to tell that you've forgotten. And that can lead to some anxiety in terms of, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm going
Right.
to say next, right? And what we're trying to avoid is anxiety involved with speaking because there
Hmm.
is. That is the most um, feared part of. That's one of the biggest fear, I should say. One of the biggest fears is public speaking. So lessen that by lessening the things that are going to make you fail. And memorizing a speech is one thing. Unless it's a poem and you're supposed to do that, unless it's something that's supposed to be memorized, don't. So the
Right.
second type is memorization. We've got manuscript speech and memorization. Now, the next two that I'm going to talk about are the types of speaking that you do in terms of a regular public speaking opportunity most of the time, or with
Right.
live stream, which is what we're talking about today. So we've got your impromptu speaking, and impromptu is off the cuff. You didn't really plan. But
Right.
Curtis, you were talking about in terms of not really planning, is it's still a little bit planned, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yesterday, and as we were planning for the show today, you mentioned impromptu, and that I shared the fact that with even with impromptu, there's some kind of mental outline that you've kind of put together, and it may not be written down as Chachi shared with us moments ago, and she went over the outline, but you've got some kind of points that you're going to speak about, and sometimes you can just jot those maybe just a couple of words down at a time or something like that, or just different points that so that you know where you can follow along in your conversation and that you've connected those points or transition as she mentioned earlier. So it is still some kind of mental outline that you've prepared quickly, if you will.
Right.
Mhm.
Right, exactly. Even like he said, off the cuff, you still kind of quickly prepare. And so, a good example of an impromptu speech or an impromptu presentation when you're live streaming, one of the Mediascope family, the other show that we do, Hot Dog LA. I'm going to call him by name because he's amazing. He happened to be, remember, guys, when there was an active shooter at the whole, was it? No, Trader Joe's. It was a Trader Joe's in LA. I don't remember which part of LA, not the one on Hollywood and Vine, but it was in LA. And so there at the Trader Joe's, there was an active shooter situation. He happened to be there, not at the Trader Joe's, but in somewhere in that plaza. He went live on Periscope and was reporting live. Talk about citizen journalism. That was off the cuff.
Right.
But like Curtis said, he still had to have some reasonable semblance of
Right.
what he was going to say. So
Absolutely.
great, I've got you all here. The thing is, I've got you here. Now I have to keep you here. And he was able to keep us there because I had been watching the whole thing on CNN.
Right.
And then I happened to, get his notification on
Hmm.
Periscope, and voila, there he was. and it was amazing. So he was there. So where they couldn't be, if that makes any sense.
Right, right.
And he was coming to people. How many people watch CNN on during the day on a regular basis? But how many of you will tune into a live stream? Many of you, right? So he was reaching a great target audience who otherwise may not have known. And in fact, he was able to go live before the news media got there.
Hey, Dr. Tachi, Enlighten Up says that he was also during fires last year. He also did an impromptu.
Ah, okay, okay, that I missed. But I mean, he's great with the
Hmm.
impromptu. Why am I
Yeah,
not seeing the Why am
yeah.
I not seeing this?
Uh, Dr. Vite mentioned earlier that there's some issues with Twitter. Twitter's down or something like that. So I don't know if that includes
Ah,
some
that may
issues with
affect
Periscope.
Periscope as
Yeah,
well. Okay,
exactly.
so you have to excuse me if I'm not seeing your comments. I'm looking for your comments. I see that people are there, but I'm not seeing the comment. I saw hearts, but I'm not seeing the comments. Weird. Okay,
Mm,
so
okay.
yeah, yeah. So in any case, just keep watching and try,
Right, right.
and hopefully I can see. And then if you are able to see comments for some reason, let us know on Periscope, because I can see things on Facebook Live. So hey, Patricia Murray, I see you. We're still on the air. I am coming. So Patricia Murray is here. Thank you so much, all the way from North Carolina. And so now I guess we should move to the next type of speech. So impromptu, it's off the cuff, right? You don't
Right.
necessarily have a planned out on paper speech, but in your head, you're thinking about what you may say, right? But there are other types of impromptu live streams as well. Don't we know those people like, hey, I'm here
Your
in a
favorite,
black booth.
your favorite, the guy that streams from his
I
bedroom with
can't
the
stand bed
taco
scopes
meat.
with no shirt on
Yeah,
from
right.
bed.
And
Don't
he's
do
got
that.
tons of viewers.
He does. Each look, here's the thing, and this goes to show you there's no rhyme or reason. Some
Right,
people like that taco
right,
meat
right.
because he'll have at least 226 people watching each time he streams,
Yeah,
at very least. And it's not that he's not good. That's my personal thing that I
right,
don't
right.
like when people stream from bed. I don't need to see you in bed.
He has that drinking a strawberry milkshake with the milkshake drizzling.
No, he is lying full down like this
Oh my
with the
goodness,
taco meat showing. Awful, awful,
that's
awful.
hilarious.
So yeah, so those are other types of scopes, or other types of live streams, I should say.
Right.
I don't think, for me, again, it really depends. The fact that this guy has 200 some odd people shows that
Right,
there's an audience for that. So I'm not saying there's no room in the
right, right,
space for it. Uh, there is, but and see, it's not like he's talking about nothing. That's the thing. He is talking about something. It's the presentation that throws me off.
right, 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 right,
Okay. So the
right,
way you put things out there is the way it's received, and could affect whether or not people receive your message.
right,
Because
right,
me,
right,
I'm done once I see the taco meat.
right. Absolutely, absolutely.
And this
We c-
person deals with food. Mm-mm. Anyway.
we kind of mentioned something that like that yesterday when we were talking as we were preparing for the show, and I think I was sharing with you is that a couple of pastors that I've listened to over a few years back, how they
Mhm.
everyone has a different delivery style, or
Right.
as a presentation, if you will, but depending on what you're like or what you're accustomed to, you could really miss a good message or miss good content because we don't understand the styles or the delivery styles and their speech giving, if you will, or their
Absolutely.
presentations, and so we can really miss pertinent information that could change our lives or just help you do a better live stream because there are different speaking styles. There are just different presentation styles altogether.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, to your point with that, you were sharing that you were used to one particular individual in
Right.
the way he spoke.
Right.
And so when it was another individual taking his
Ex-
place or whatever, it
exactly.
threw you off because it wasn't the same. Now, one thing that we have to do as listeners, active listeners, is
Mhm.
realize that everybody who live streams about coaching, like Coach Tawana,
Right.
you're here.
Right.
Everybody who live streams about coaching is not going to do it the same way. So we
Right.
have to, be open to it. But let's be real. Many people don't like. I'll tell you a story, you all a story. So I'm huge into Zumba. I love Zumba, but I also like very specific Zumba teachers. So at the gym I go to, at one point they had a lot of the same Zumba teachers that I loved, and then there was a change in the changeover,
Right.
and they brought in some new people. I'm not one that will leave a class if I don't like it, because I won't be that rude, but you'll never see me again, right? So that story is to say that really your audience is the most important thing. The audience is not going to adjust to your speaking style,
Right.
very rarely,
Right.
unless you're very famous. They're not
Right.
going to adjust to your speaking style. You have to adjust to them. So that means
Absolutely.
you, as the presenter, you need to adjust your methods of communication. If this doesn't work, guess what? Next time you're not going to do that. If you
Right.
notice that the audience responded well, you got hearts or you got likes to this one thing that you said, or stars or
Right.
whatever, or moons, or purple hearts, green diamonds, whatever it is they gave, that
Right.
okay, this is something that the audience is into, and I'm going to continue to incorporate that
Right.
into the way that I speak on live stream. You have to adjust to them because they are not going to adjust to you. They will easily click you off and never
Right.
come
Right.
back.
And I think as you're mentioning that gets into another piece of it, and perhaps we'll talk about that later on as well, or add it at some point during our conversation. But in any event, that gets into the part of the analytics. As you're mentioning that, building your audience is that, and as the title of the show, or is we live stream easy? It's a question mark, but it's a question mark for a reason, because there's a lot of different little things that really matter. Because if you're looking to build an audience, as Tachi just mentioned, you want to pay attention to. You're going to have to look at your live stream. You're going to have to pay attention to your scope, what the people are saying, what comments they were making. You're going to have to pay attention to their hearts who are being, so what are people responding to, if you will.
Exactly. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to pay attention to that
Yeah.
because, like Curtis says, it comes with analytics.
Yeah.
Really reflect whether or not you're paying attention to your audience. So
Absolutely.
if you're wondering why things are wonky, ask yourself, well, am I
Right.
giving the audience what they need? It could be
Right.
that you're not. So self-assessment is always good in this case. And this is what
Absolutely.
we're doing today. And guess what? This is not the sexiest part of live streaming. We
No.
understand that. But there is, I think, part of the reason so many people get disengaged from live streaming is because there are amazing live streams, and then there are some that are not that good. And maybe it's because they don't understand that it's a process. So that's what we're here to talk
Right.
about.
Right.
Capiche? Yeah.
Yeah. And to add, Tachi, it goes back to what you mentioned earlier, or what the whole, I guess the whole gamut of just what we're talking about is that this is a audience-centered approach, if you will. So the
Mm-hmm.
audience is what matters. And I think sometimes we can, myself included at times, that what prevents us from going live is sometimes just us. We're getting in the way
Mm-hmm.
and making the live stream about us, being that I don't have matching this, I don't, and things aren't perfect, and they're not going to be perfect. But again, what's going to be perfect is what, is that you're engaging with your audience. That's what's going to be perfect. And that may not even be perfect at times,
Yes.
but it's just that the engagement piece is huge, because they'll keep coming back if you're giving them something that's of substance.
And this is why they pay you the big bucks, Curtis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let Let's continue on. So we've got four types. I've given you three. I gave you manuscript,
Right.
memorized. I gave you impromptu, and then the last one, which is the one we really want you to focus on and
Right.
use, is the extemporaneous speaking. So extemporaneous, you've probably heard that before. That means practiced and prepared without memorization, right?
Right.
You're using notes, you're planning out, you're doing your research on whatever it is you're talking about. Now, granted, this outline that we gave you is not for every single type of
Yeah.
stream. You can add, you can take away, right? But if you're doing something like what we're doing, you're giving information. You want your audience to pick up that information. It must be done in an organized way. So extemporaneous speaking is the best way to convey that, right? So let's go back. what is it good for, right? Extemporaneous speaking. Now, again, you're respecting your audience,
Right.
right? Part of audience-centered approach is respecting your audience by being prepared. So it gives you a procedure, right? When
Right.
you have that outline, that gives you a path to follow. It gives you an outline to follow, and that's
Mm.
what it is, an
Right.
outline to follow of what you're going to say next. And it shows that you put in the work to do the
Yes.
research.
Yes.
There are
Yes.
already too many people out there just talking and not giving sources. So
Right.
you said,
Right.
where'd you get that from?
Yeah.
Okay. Hashtag side eye. And this shows, when you do this, this shows that you put in the research and you've done the work. Okay. It also prevents distractions. It prevents you having this outline and doing things extemporaneously. It's really easy when you're at an event or to do things to get distracted. If you have this outline, you won't get distracted. Trust me, because you have
Right.
a procedure that you're following, and there you go. And even if you're cooking, right? You're doing a cooking show. Yolanda Lattimore is one who does amazing cooking segments, right? And there are a
Yeah,
lot of other
she's
cooks.
like 30
She's
shows.
really bomb. 30 shows, and next time I'm up in Atlanta, I expect her to cook one of those wonderful things for me. And no
I know that's
excuses,
right.
Yolanda Lattimore. I'll be there soon. So Yolanda Lattimore always does it. She's cooking. So even if she's not cooking from a physical recipe, she's got a recipe up here in her head because she's made this several times
Right.
and she's
Right.
going through the steps, right? That's a procedure. So following a recipe, that is your outline. When you're cooking, your outline is built in. But in between that, what? You have some little small talk. You talk about maybe Cliffy Land is another person who does this. He does the cooking around the world live stream, right?
Right.
So he does the UN member nations, like the 180 UN member nations, and they're on round two. What he has done is he cooks, but he also talks about the history of the dish. He talks a little bit about the country, and on top of it, he'll also play some music in the background from that country. Now, word of warning, if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that it is either very low and you're talking over it, because you don't want to get dinged for copyright infringements.
Right.
So those are the 4 types of speaking. We put that out there so that you can adequately plan your live streams. And hopefully you took a screenshot of that outline, because that can help you in terms of better doing it. Now, again, you may be very experienced, so that may not necessarily be for you, or it may be for you because you
Right.
say, I'm really experienced, but I need to do better with being organized in terms of speaking. Voila, the outline. Okay. And now
Right.
you know the 4 types of speaking. You know that the 2 types that you're going to be talking about mostly is impromptu, but mostly extemporaneous.
Right.
Right?
Right. I
Good.
think it's interesting too, Tachi, because I think when we are telling stories or we're watching something or story on television or movie on television, and that story or that movie unfolds, we like for things to be in a logical order. And people,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So people like to be able to follow a story and understand what you're saying. And I think Tachi, you
Mhm.
mentioned yesterday as we were preparing for the show, is that your that the content or that you're talking about is relevant. And I think I'm kind of getting ahead. I'm just looking, but we'll talk
You
more
you
about that
are
as
getting
well.
ahead, but that's okay. That's
But
okay. We are going to talk about relevancy, and
right, right,
but that is audience centered, right? Making
sure,
sure that what you're talking
right,
about is relevant to the audience that hears about. Look, the people that are going to support your stream are the people that you need to be
sure,
concerned about,
right,
right? When I do using Mediascope as an example, of course I want everybody to come in, but I know I have the regulars that are there and I mustn't disappoint. So they are my audience. You all, the Mediascope family, are the audience. And so everything I'm doing is for you all. So I'm making sure, all right, well, these are stories that I think they would be really interested in. That, involving you all by saying, calling you out when you come in, those types of things. And again, that's engagement, and we talked about
right,
that
right.
last week. But so the next thing we have to talk about, MC, notes.
Yes, notes, notes, notes. No, I'm sorry.
Yes,
I'm looking at the comments here too, so I apologize.
I know. So let me greet
Y-
Miss Biscuithead. Hey,
yeah,
how are you? I saw you came in. I can't see comments for some reason, but Curtis can.
yeah, I
So
can. And she says that she's watching from work. So hey, Miss Biscuit Head, what's going on?
how I love Miss Biscuithead because you work 24 hours a day, don't you? Because yesterday
Yeah,
you were at work. while we were live streaming too. So we appreciate you, Miss Biscuithead. We really do. All of you who Bogard, Periscope, Facebook Live, and YouTube from work, thank you. We appreciate you.
And the study divine says, slow Curtis is real.
Curtis is real. He's
Yeah.
real. Oh. He's not a cartoon. He is real. Oh. So
Yeah.
Curtis is real. You get to see him and reach out and touch, and you just be touching your screen, but he's real. Oh, and Mark Ward, the Netflix comedian,
Yeah, I was gonna say
is
that's the
over
funny
here.
man. That's the funny man.
That's a funny man right here. Oh, and besides Mark Ward, Anna is here. Anna, how are you?
Hey,
Good to
what's up,
see you.
Anna?
So
What's
we're
up?
yeah, the crew is all here. Welcome once again. If you don't know what we're doing and you think we're just doing nothing, we're doing something. This
Right.
is And We're Live, and that's the show that Curtis and I do that talks all about effective live streaming from A to Z, as they say in
Absolutely.
Canada.
Yeah.
We are covering live streaming. So for the past 2 weeks, we were off last week, but the week before, we had been covering presentation, effective
Right.
presentation, and prepping. So this is all preparation to live
Right.
stream. There's so many people who just get on and just do it. That's nice, and you may be great, but you may be horrible. So we're
Right.
trying to help avoid you being horrible by giving you these tips.
Yeah, that's interesting because this show here just really, as Tachi mentioned, it's just kind of we're right now we're outlining the process of going live, and we actually have not gone live yet. So we're just talking about some of the, as Tachi mentioned, some of the stuff that may not be so interesting, but if you are interested in making sure that your viewers or your customers or maybe even clients are
Hmm.
engaged. You want to make sure that they're a part of the live stream and you want to engage them. We're talking about the audience center approach, and that's what we'll be talking about. Again, just not just the only the impromptu, but the extemporaneous. Uh, yeah,
Yes, sir.
that one there. But yeah, see, she throws all these big words out there for me, so just to challenge me. But
It's what it's called. What do you want me to do?
yeah,
I
it's
can't
just.
make up what it's called.
But
Extemporaneous speaking.
yeah, okay. But yeah, so that. But yeah, so again, it's just important that we focus on the audience-centered approach style of presentation or live streaming, so that we are engaging our audience, and so that we are making that connection and building relationships, because those people, in a lot of ways, will become your customer or your client.
Absolutely. And we have it again, we have years worth of information on this. And
Yeah,
we will talk at some point, effective live streaming for businesses, different businesses. We actually, both of us actually run live stream stuff for different types of businesses, real estate, etc. So I'm a huge I'm the real estate person. I've been working with real estate, social media, and live streaming for just about 2 years now. But
right, right,
and Curtis has been doing all different types of industries for a while. So we're just bringing you that information. We'll bring you some more information about effectively doing that in those industries later. So now let's talk about your notes. I know this is not the sexiest part of it. And you're
right.
like, when can we live stream? Soon, Grasshopper, soon. So, so let's talk about your notes. They need to be organized. So we're going to talk
Right,
about organizing your notes. We're going to talk about so how do you organize? Okay, the way that we just talked about, using an outline. Okay,
right,
that outline that we gave, and we'll put it back up at the end in case you want to take a screenshot of it. But that outline. Oh, hold on a minute. Oh, okay, Anna, thank you. I'm glad. Oh, thank you for sharing as well. Thank you. And she's watching this through a headache, so thank you so much. See, that's why we have to do a bang up job for you. And Anna also says Curtis Brooks on screen in the flesh. They
yeah.
everybody
Hey, hey.
people are just surprised. People are just surprised.
He's
So
alive. He's
okay,
real.
he's real. Everybody
Yeah.
just thought you were a recording that I put on. No,
Hmm.
he's real. So you've got your outline. We'll put that back up at the end in case you want to take a screenshot. And here's the thing: you're going to go digital, or are you going to go analog? And by
Right.
analog, I mean old school, by paper, not digital. So different ways that you can do this. You can go digital. So, for example, let me talk about what I do with MediaScope. I use my computer and I put the notes in a different tab. Okay, so I'll use Google. What is it?
Google
Google
Docs.
Docs.
Hmm.
So I use Google Docs and I put my notes for Mediascope in Google Docs. So again, that's web based. So all I'm really doing is switching between how Curtis and I are connected through the web, because we're connected through the web.
Right.
Another thing we'll talk about at another point. Then I'm switching between Facebook Live, right? And then I use another device for Periscope. But I have three tabs open basically: the how we're connected, Curtis and I are connected, the Facebook Live, and then my notes, right? So you can use something like a Google Docs and put it in another tab. If that doesn't work for you to switch between tabs and you'd rather look at another device, get your iPad, get your phone, whatever, another device that you can see well. Your phone may be too small, but if it works for you, then do that. And you can scroll through and do it digitally, right? But you definitely want to have notes. I like digital for Mediascope, but for this today, my notes are analog, right? I've got a pad. I
Right.
love legal pads. I can fill up 6 or 7 legal pads within the course of a month because I'm always writing things
Right.
down, right?
Right.
So how do you do that, Curtis? How do you what do you put your notes on?
Right here.
Oh,
Notepad.
wow, you have an old school
Yeah,
black
I'm
and
old school
white
too.
notebook.
But I will actually use I will use digital, devices, or notepads and things like that, iPads, computers, and stuff like that. But for me, it's just something where I don't like to be fumbling around with the computer.
Yes.
Or then the other piece of it is that uh, I'm almost, my fear with the speaking piece of it is that I'm afraid that the digital equipment is going to go down, and then I am trying to fumble through something, and right, exactly, and that's exactly what I've been looking like. So here I have
You
my
do.
notes.
That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, exactly. So here I have my notes in front of me, and yeah, Lighten Up says they want to set their alarm for the show. But yeah, so anyways, for me, it's best to use the old notepad, because as much as I enjoy the digital equipment, computers, and things of that nature, that's one of my little fears. Is just like the screen's gonna go black, and and I'm gonna be like, hold on.
And you know what? You are spot on with that. That's the
Right.
thing. Technology. I always tell my students,
Mm.
technology can and will fail
Will,
you. So
absolutely.
here's the thing: you
Absolutely.
need a backup to the backup to the backup.
Yeah.
Because what happens when they do their speeches in front of me? That it's been a while since I taught
Mhm.
public speaking in the classroom. Now
Right.
I'm mostly media, but I started off 18 years ago teaching public speaking classes. So if your notes fail and you can't continue, you think you're going to do well on that speech? No, ma'am. No, sir. So that's your fault for
Jeez.
not having a
Yeah.
backup. So if your PowerPoint goes out, you darn well better be prepared to keep going without it, right?
Yeah.
So that says that to you as well. If something happens, and that's
Absolutely.
happened to me before, where it's gone out, and I'm like, well, whatever, I'm prepared to talk about it anyway. That's what
Right.
you have to be. That's what your audience came there for.
Absolutely.
Respect them enough to have a backup to the backup. So
Right.
that means if you're digital, that you need to have some sort of paper backup, and you don't have to necessarily write it out. Print
Right.
out what it was you're going to talk about. Make sure
Right.
you have a printout copy so you can write notes, etc. If you feel like you want to write out the notes, well, good for you. Write out the notes. You can. But so here's the thing. Let's talk about the other end of it, the paper
Right.
end of it. I'm old school too. I love digital. You guys know I'm a techie,
Right.
but I also love writing out things is how things get solidified in my head. I
Right.
love that. But here's the downfall with that. Some people like note cards, right? And we talked about this
Oh boy.
yesterday. Some
Did.
people love note cards. But let me tell you something. You damn well better make sure that they are numbered if you are going to use note cards, because what
Wow.
happens is in the process of speaking, you're nervous, right?
Right.
Some
Right.
people are not, but if you're already a nervous person and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, the next, and then they all tumble onto the table. And if they're not numbered and not in order, you don't know where you left off. And then
Yeah, that's
20 cards are flipping up in the air, and that's the end of it. You then lose it because you're already nervous, and then this is just something else. Not everybody, especially when you first start speaking and first start live streaming, not everybody has
right,
the wherewithal to bring it back and get it back together. And what
right,
you don't
right,
want to do is like, okay, bye, click and click off. Don't do
right.
that. Don't do that.
Show's over.
Show's over, bye. Right?
That's hilarious.
Don't do that. That's why respect yourself and your audience enough to get it together ahead of time.
Right, right.
Click, buy. Don't do that. Don't do
I'm
that.
sorry. That's awful. But I
So-
mean, it can actually happen though. So just as Dr. Tachi said, it's just to truly be prepared.
It can happen, and it's happened to a lot of people. Now, it's more detrimental in a situation where you don't have a table, right, or don't have a podium or something in front of you. If they fall on a table, okay, you could probably get it back together as long as it's
Yeah.
not too spread out. But if you're standing, the Lord be with you. That's all I have to say. So,
I'm sorry,
let me
I
go to
find
the
that
room for a minute.
I find that so hilarious, but yeah, at the same time scary because it's just like, oh Lord.
It's scary. Well, picture somebody who's not used to doing a live stream, and that
Yes.
happens.
Yes.
So that's why my suggestion is if you can have your notes on 1 or 2 sheets of paper, that is better than having a whole bunch of note cards that can. And you know what? The thing is, they won't fly at any other time, but when you need them, they will fly, grow wings, and fly
Right,
away.
right,
Okay,
absolutely.
when you don't need them. So
Right.
don't. I would say stay away from note cards. If you do use note cards, make sure they're numbered. Try and use as few as possible because the more you have, the more there are to fly away and get out of order. Anna says a couple of things. Anna says this is major. I know he's real, yet it's so great to see you all, meaning you. Also,
Appreciate it.
Google Docs is a good point. Yes, it is. Use Google Docs. It's free. Also, she asks, how does your PC handle the bandwidth that Facebook and live streaming requires? Let's come back to that. That is a good question, and that's something that we're going to talk about in coming weeks. I don't know if you have a quick answer to that, but that's something that we're going to talk about fairly extensively.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little later because I truly it ends up just being making sure that you have the bandwidth, and that's kind of the quick answer, and the bandwidth meaning that
A strong enough internet and strong enough computer to handle all of that. So one or the other sometimes is not enough.
Right.
So we'll talk about that at length. Don't worry.
There's a lot to that one there.
Anna also says she's also often with a notebook, and she has to get her typing game up. She's faster with her pen, absolutely. And CPMP is CBMP is Curtis Brooks Media Productions.
It's a certification.
Yeah, I need that certification.
No, yeah, it's Curtis Brooks Media Productions.
So Patricia makes a good point. She says if she's giving a talk, she would use her iPad because it scrolls. And you could do the same thing with the live stream. You could use your iPad and scroll through. The thing is, again, make sure it's charged. This is with anything digital. Make sure it's charged, because if it goes out in the middle, or you notice that you have 5% left and you still have 30 minutes left to go, I hope you have a paper copy.
Right.
So just think about the fact anything could happen. God forbid you could drop it and it goes out. It could just, go out. So the thing is, if you're going to do this, make sure you have a backup. If you're going to do digital, make sure you have a backup. Make sure all your devices are charged. That is the key. And it happens sometimes that it's not. But you know what? Somebody who's paying you to come or to speak, whether it's live stream or whatever, if you're giving a talk, for example, nobody cares that your stuff is in charge. They would have been like, well, you should have charged it beforehand.
Exactly.
So think about that.
Well, now, Dr. Tati, what do you think about regards to, the outline you just shared with us, or as we've been talking about creating an outline, and that if they decide not to use index cards or try to memorize it, or if it's not a manuscript, if they haven't written it out, but just memorizing the key points from their outline, is that
Go ahead.
Just again, just memorizing the key points from their outline. Do you think that can be effective? So, like for instance, like on the outline, you talked about the 3 points, the body. You know, you.
Yes.
So, would you think that's just equally as effective, just memorizing the body, or at least knowing what your key points are, and just being able to expand on those key points?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. That is an excellent point. That knowing what
Hmm.
your three main points are, I
Right.
think it is key. And here's the thing:
Sure.
you probably, in researching and going over stuff, it starts to commit to memory. Your brain kind of
Absolutely.
has muscle memory in a
Absolutely.
way, right?
Hmm.
So you probably only need to look down at your notes because I'm using notes now.
Sure.
So what I did is kind of like a keyword outline. And a keyword outline is not where you're writing everything out.
Yeah.
I have a couple of words down that are
Hmm.
going to clue me into what I'm going to say
Exactly.
next.
Exactly.
That to me is effective enough because I've done the research and
Right.
we've talked where I remember basically
Right.
what it is that I need to say. And
Right.
that's probably the case for most people.
Right.
If you're the type of person that, no, I still need a little bit more, write a little bit more out. That is okay. But for the most part, a keyword outline and that outline we gave you, so that outline we gave you, fill it in with your information, okay?
Right. Right.
Just to fill it in with a few keywords. That should be good. That should be good.
Exactly. Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anna says she's plugged in all the time and that she travels with extension cords legit. Oh, I have an orange extension cord in the back of my car
It's like the outdoor
simply
extension
because,
cord.
yes, the outdoor. Well, again, you guys know I'm a production person.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that's
Right.
why I'm here now. I'm still on location at the shoot I was at earlier. But because of that, I walk around with extension cords, what is it? The extender, the power, the
Yes.
power,
Hmm.
you know what it's called, the
Yeah.
power strip.
Hmm.
Hmm. I have a power strip that plugs in 10 devices.
Wow.
So, yeah, because if I ever need it, I'm someplace like at a coffee shop or whatever,
Right.
everybody already has all the stuff taken. And I'm like, well, hey, plug it into this.
Yes. Yes.
That way I get power too.
Right.
So that's another thing. If you're doing a live stream on location from places like that, think about, we'll talk about equipment later, but that's something to think about,
Right.
being plugged up and being plugged in. Like if I wasn't plugged in, this probably wouldn't last very long, right?
Right.
Or
Right.
if I wasn't charged up, it wouldn't last very long. So those are things to think
Right.
about when you're streaming out on location. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, there's a difference between being live on location and then live in your house. In your house,
Absolutely.
you already know what works and what doesn't. On location,
Right.
you don't. But let's not get into that because already we are at, can you believe we are at 54 minutes already?
Jeez.
So,
Man.
so we're going, Ross Brand is here though. I
Hey,
have
what's
to
going on, Ross?
acknowledge that live streaming royalty is here. What's up, Ross Brand? We are talking about further prep for your live stream and actually making the presentation. Before you even speak, we're talking about the presentation part of it. So let's go on. Note cards, I say don't do them. MC, what about you?
Yeah, I say don't do them as well. Or if you're going to do the note cards, I think just take few as possible. And as I mentioned earlier, just write down those keywords, or Tachi mentioned it as well, I should say,
Mm.
write down those keywords
Yeah, I said it.
that's gonna jog your memory in regards to what your
Hmm.
topic of discussion is about. So just take few as
Absolutely.
possible, because again, in my mind, it's like the index cards are like the computer screen going black, as I mentioned earlier, and that scares me. So
Well, and think about it really quickly with note cards. What is the tendency when you're nervous anyway? And this is for, a lot of the stuff
absolutely.
we're telling you is for live stream and speaking in public, in a public situation in person. So this will work for either of that. But the
Right.
tendency is, let's use this power strip and pretend that this is, or power bank charger. And so the tendency is when you're nervous, you hold to things tightly. When you hold
Yes.
things tightly, you start to shake. And so this is where the nervous is. So you're shaking, you're trying to stop yourself from shaking. Voila, you drop them. Okay. And then now you're trying to compose yourself. So, and then also there's distraction with constantly doing this. Whereas if you have
Right.
one or two sheets of paper with,
Right.
or you're using a digital device, that lessens the distraction.
Right.
So for me, no cards are a no. But if you're going to do it, please practice with no cards.
Absolutely.
So let's
Yeah.
move on. You ready to move on to language?
I am. Let's do it.
All right, let's quickly go through this. So we'll talk about language, how to say what you have to say. Language is extremely important, and it doesn't matter what quote language you speak, whether it's English, Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Mandarin or Cantonese,
Mhm.
whether it's Japanese, whether you're speaking Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa. It doesn't matter. Xhosa, Zulu, whatever you're speaking, it's doing it effectively in whatever language you're speaking in,
Right.
right? So how to say what you have to say. So Curtis brought this really good point up yesterday. It depends on what who your audience is, right?
Right.
What you say and how you say it is directly dependent on who your audience is,
Right. Right.
right? So if you're speaking to a bunch of sounds like a bunch of grapes, but if you're speaking to an audience that's full of millennials,
Right.
right? The way you say things differs from the way you would speak to a room full of baby boomers. Or
Right.
let's
Right.
take that out of a room and put it into a live stream. If
Right.
you're live streaming on a particular topic that you know will draw in a lot of Gen Xers, that's different from the way you would live stream to
Right.
draw in Gen Z,
Right.
right?
Right.
So it's all in the language and the way you say things. So, for example, slang or vernacular versus standard language, right?
Mhm.
When would you use it? Is it okay to use slang? Is it okay to not always use standard language? Well, what do you think, MC? Is it okay to use slang or vernacular in a live stream?
I, I think it's okay, and as you mentioned yesterday, as we're preparing, it's okay if you're using different kind of language. Make sure that your entire audience is able to participate in the discussion, that they understand what you're saying. So if you give an acronym for, you know, CBMP, that you say Curtis Brooks Media Productions or whatever you're discussing, whatever acronym you're giving, but you make sure that your audience understands it. And I think certain kinds of vernacular or jargon, you've got to make sure that you've done your research, because if you're speaking on a particular topic, that particular jargon or
Hmm.
vernacular may work. But if you don't know your audience, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? And you're going to lose them.
Absolutely. So yeah, standard using slang doesn't work for everyone
Right,
or
right,
every situation. Think about you. If you're the type of person and what your topic is lends to using a slang
right,
or vernacular language, then I think it's okay. But if it's something that requires something a little more standard, stick with standard. But I will say
right.
this, that sometimes you're trying to draw in new audiences. Think
Mm,
about, and you know this
absolutely.
because if you're trying to draw in new audiences, like
Bad
you're
Mama
doing
Jama.
something, bad mamma jamma. I mean, and that's another thing, making
Yeah.
references to things that people have no clue about. I remember one time I was in the classroom and I said, this is just like this is the introduction to the opposite sketch. So if you're not a Gen Xer and you didn't watch You Can't Do That on television, on
Hmm.
Nickelodeon or
Right,
Canadian
right,
television, you would not know that. So my
right.
students were like, what opposite sketch? I was like, forget it. Too young.
Never
So
mind. Right, right.
never mind, right? So those types of things can fall flat
Right.
if you're not, and then you have to spend a lot of time explaining. So
Sure.
think about the cultural references that you use and whether or not, if you have time to explain that, it could be something that's funny, but maybe it's something that, and then I can use these cultural references with the Mediascope audience because a lot of us know those types of things. You
Right,
know, you're around in the 80s, so you understand and know those types of things. So, but if you've got it, may fall flat
right,
um, with them. So that's part of language, right? Knowing the cultural references to use, whether or not your audience it will resonate with them. Okay,
right,
and then slang versus vernacular. If it's slang or vernacular versus standard language. If you're trying to draw in new audiences, right? Trying to get maybe some Gen Z, but you're
right,
talking about like some medical procedures, maybe that's the time to use a little bit of slang, use a little
right,
bit of what they know to
right,
draw them in,
right.
right?
Absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
vernacular, and then simpler language. So, okay, let's say you're doing a live stream about like medical conditions or something like that. inevitable that you're going to have to use jargon. However, not
Right.
everybody is a doctor or a medical professional. You've got to break it down. So you've got to make
Right.
sure we understand that jargon, right?
Right.
Simplify it for those of us that are not in the medical profession.
Right. Right. Yeah, and
Fantastical.
I think that would also be, as far as person when they're doing a presentation, when they're speaking certain jargon, that's maybe a great introduction, with some kind of jargon, or again, just to kind of pique a person's interest, or your audience interest, if you will, with jargon, and then you explain it, and then you go into your discussion.
Absolutely,
Yeah. So
absolutely. Ross Brand says, I think it's okay to use slang jargon or historical references to emphasize a point, catch
yeah,
attention, or a joke, but you need to
absolutely.
bring it back out
Sure.
of that after.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, Ross. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely, absolutely. Remember, audience centered approach. You're not live streaming for yourself, you're live streaming for them, for your audience. And wouldn't it be good to make sure that your audience understands you every step of the way and
Right.
that you're not using Planet
Exactly.
of the Apes references
Right.
when
Right.
and see I love and see Planet of the Apes is one of my favorite series of show because it was a movie then it was a show. It's one of my favorite. Okay,
Right.
so I use Planet of the Apes references all the time, but it doesn't make any sense if the person doesn't get it. So yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely, absolutely. So let's keep going with this. Um, that's language. That's just
Right.
touching on language. There's so much more to it, but that's what we're touching on. So we're almost out of time. Do we want to do the visual part of it, or do we want to just do all the visuals next week?
I think we should, because we're like right at an hour, right?
Say it. You think we should leave that till next week?
Yeah, I think we should leave it to next week because we're like
Yeah.
right at an hour. So, yeah,
So
kind
let's
of
do that. Let's do that. Let's respect our audience, even though we've
absolutely
disrespected them. If we intended to do half an hour, and so now it's been an hour. But I hope you've enjoyed this hour. And
right.
so next week, as like we were talking about with our outline, and could we put that back up? Do you mind
Absolutely.
putting the outline
Absolutely.
back up? As we were talking about with our outline, you should kind of close with a summary, right? What's happening. If you're trying to persuade people, and okay, that's different types of speaking, and we need to get into that next week as well.
Mm,
The different types of speaking,
right. Right.
right? So there are different types. We'll get into that next week. Let me write that down for
Right.
myself. So we have the different types of speeches or different types of
Right.
presentations, but we didn't talk about the different types of speaking.
But
So
it's
we'll do
all,
that.
but it's all storytelling though. So remember that, guys. It's different type of
It's all
presentation
storytelling.
skills. Yeah, it's all whether it's presentation types, speaking
Hmm.
types. It's all
All
storytelling.
storytelling. We said that in unison. Yay.
Yeah.
And guess who I see? Chosen Mogul is here. Chosen Mogul,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us on the Periscope side.
I have
Yay.
not seen her in a
Let's see.
while.
Mark Ward. Yeah, yeah. Hey, Chosen Mogul. Ross, hold on. Anna says, oh, and I haven't even watched the entire Planet of the Apes franchise yet. Well, if you hear me reference Cornelius, you know what I'm talking about. Mark Ward says, you bring the potato salad, I'll bring the raisins. No, sir. I want neither the potato salad nor the raisins, nor them mixed together. Okay? That is an abomination, and you know that. So basically, remember at the end, you have your conclusion. So in your conclusion, especially with the live stream,
Right.
we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about next week, right? So what we're going to talk about next week is what, MC?
Is the visual piece of it, um, the appropriate
Hmm.
um, the appropriate dress and visual aids.
Yes. So in addition to that, so it's you visually, and then it's the visual aids you use, the presentation
Right.
aids. So we're talking about visual in two different senses: you as a visual, and then the pictures, the graphics, video, etc., used to support what you're talking
Right.
about. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. Yeah, fantastic.
Your
All right.
60 your 60 slide presentation. No, I'm joking. You should,
Oh,
I don't. That's way too much, but
he's
yeah.
not. He's not. Anyway, guys, you have been absolutely amazing. Thank you for listening
Absolutely.
for the entire hour. You all have been amazing. Shout outs to everybody on Periscope, Facebook Live, and on YouTube. You have been absolutely amazing, as I said. So next week, as MC and I said, we're going to talk about the visual end of it. Yeah, we're not done with prep yet. We're talking about the visual end of it. So we will see you next week.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for being a part of the wonderful show. And we're live. Yeah, I'm sorry I was reading the comments here.
Yeah, I was like, okay. Sorry about the
Well,
comments.
it's
Yeah,
it's it's
any
delayed. It's delayed too from your end.
it is delayed. It is
Yeah,
delayed.
so
It is delayed. So Patricia Murray says great info. Anna says this is going to be a great series. Oh, thank you. We're glad you're enjoying it.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I can't see what you all have to say on Periscope. I apologize, but thank you for being there on Periscope.
Absolutely. All right, guys. We will see you next week. What time, Tachi?
To
At 2 p.m. Eastern.
the normal
The
time. It's only
normal
because
time,
I had
yeah.
a shoot today. That
Yeah,
yeah
yeah. So,
yeah.
but okay,
Okay.
guys. Yeah, guys.
Cheers, people.